am sitting here with the author of The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot. There he is right there. How are you doing today?
Very good. I was just reading The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot. So, and there's a picture of me back in the day as a rock journalist, and that was taken in Greenwich Village. And if
that's a great picture.
Yeah, thank you. If you've seen, that's Jimi Hendrix there. But if you've seen the movie A Complete Unknown about Bob Dylan, that all took place in Greenwich Village, pretty much. So anyway, that was that. But thanks for having me on the show, and thank you so much for getting my book and for putting a review on Amazon. It means so much. So we're excited. I love working with Hanger One publishers who published The Lost Tribes. And one thing I just want to start off by, if I may, with your listeners, Lost Tribes of Bigfoot has a thing called IBT. It's immersive book technology. And if you were to take your phone's camera and hit on that barcode, it would open it up to a video. And there's a whole bunch of them throughout the book, but I do a little synopsis of each chapter. So, and what they did was they asked me for what are your favorite chapters? So I picked like 8 of them, and then we did this video shoot. And actually, the videos you see are of me in my office in Pennsylvania. I spend summers in Pennsylvania and winters down here in Florida, where it's cold. Not as cold as Arkansas, but it's cold. God, this got to be the coldest winter, down here ever. And not to cry the blues, but my wife and I went down to Key West, Florida. That's paradise. Stayed at Margaritaville. Well, she was sick the entire time. Didn't leave the hotel room. And then the second day, nobody went down to Key West because it was so cold. So it was like the vacation in hell. It should have been on a scale of 1 to 10. It was about a 3. So.
Oh my goodness.
That was our trip to Key West. So anyway. That was in January, but it's been cold down here, so I don't know.
I think the south of the United States has gotten hit harder this winter than they have in a really long time.
Yeah, and just to continue with the complaints with the flu that's going around that everybody gets, not for 3 days but for 2 weeks. It seems to be a combination of the flu, of COVID-19, of RSV, of Norwalk virus, and I don't know what else. But it's the worst flu situation in the last 15 years. Mm. And hold that thought, Casey. I just want to show your readers a copy. And the reason I'm being so gloomy, my next book is going to be The Paranormal Apocalypse. Is this how it ends? And there's a gray as a Grim Reaper, and there's an hourglass. Author of the Shepton mythology. So this is going to be coming. There's all the skulls. So this is going to be coming out this year, and that's also Hanger One. So I designed the cover, but they had a graphic illustrator make it look good. So anyway,
that's an enticing image. Is there a way to put it on your wish list? Can I put it on my wish list? Is it not out yet?
No, it's not out yet, but please do. And, maybe if you're interested, you could have me back on your program. We could talk about it. I hope to have it completed and in hand this summer, hopefully this summer, or maybe even this fall, but it'll be done in 2025. And that's the project I'm working on now. So, yeah, just looking forward to it. I'm really excited. I'm psyched. I do a lot of writing down here in Florida.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it, and it looks very enticing just from the image and the title alone. So I know I will for sure be getting a copy, and hopefully everybody else that just seen it will do the same.
Okay, very good. Now, are you an avid reader? Do you read quite a bit?
I read quite a bit, I would say. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. Because a lot of people, we do these book signing events, and a lot of people say, I don't read. Or people say that I can't concentrate on reading. And why is it that you can? What's the kick you get out of reading?
For me, I like the fact that it kind of pulls me away from my physical reality, and it puts me in kind of like a psychological world away from that, where I can just kind of breathe in somebody else's place for a little while rather than my own. It's just a different plane shift for me mentally.
Yeah. And I find that I find it meditative too.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll read something and I don't get it, so I have to read it again, maybe 3 times, and then finally I get into that groove where I'm in sync with the author. But it usually works, but not always. Sometimes you really have to work at it to, for me, to get into that groove. So no, but I just like to read and like to write, and one of the biggest thrills I have as an author is when somebody comes up to you or comes up to me and says, "I read your book and I really liked it." I mean, just that affirmation, I mean, how wonderful to have that, to hear that, as so it's pretty cool. So you don't get it all the time, but when you do, it's a real delight. So.
Well, I can tell you, as somebody who did read the book, your book that we just talked about, The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, I can tell you that one thing that I very much appreciated about reading it was the educational aspects of it and the opportunity to be introduced to new perspectives of something that I've heard about since I was a child.
Okay.
I obviously have, especially doing the kind of podcast that we do, I obviously have heard of the Bigfoot. I've heard stories about it my whole life. But they've always been very one direction in the idea of the Bigfoot. So when reading your book, all the different theories of what it could be or might not be really was interesting to me.
That's one reason why I called it The Lost Tribes of Bigfoot. And I get asked that a lot, like, why did you call it that? And what are these lost tribes? And the lost tribes are pretty much a metaphor of all of the theories that you're talking about. Like, what is Bigfoot? Well, some people think it's Neanderthal, that Neanderthal is still out there. Some people think it's Gigantopithecus, this big 12-foot orangutan-looking creature that came over on not the Siberian Strait to North America and Canada. And they believe that creatures still exist. And then the theories about missing links and all kinds of other things. So we don't know. We're looking, but a lot of people, like even Jeff Meldrum, believes that maybe Gigantopithecus is playing a part in this. So again, they're just theories. We don't know. There was a famous sighting in Sarasota, Florida, and there was an elderly couple that had a porch camera, and they shot a picture of this orangutan-looking creature. It's an actual creature. It wasn't made up, and they shot it. They turned it over to the police, and the police investigated. And then Lauren Coleman, the famous cryptozoologist, took a look at it and thought either was an orangutan or something like an orangutan, or maybe a Bigfoot-like orangutan. He wasn't quite sure, but whatever it was a live creature, and it was in Florida. And where I live in Citrus County, that's on the Gulf side. I'm like 14 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. But where I live, I'm close to all these counties where they see the skunk ape, our smaller version of Bigfoot. The Everglades is 16 counties, starting from Miami-Dade all the way up to Polk. So 16 counties of a lot of swampland, a lot of places where these creatures could hide. There's a lot of these places that are close to where I live that they claim to have seen the skunk ape. One thing that researchers are saying is that we've seen the most of these sightings back in the 1970s, but because of development, because of all these houses going up and everything, that Bigfoot is going sort of undercover and is either going into the swamps or going up to Georgia. So that's the theory. So if you have a summer cottage in Georgia, look out. So you might see one of these cryptids. But that's the theory, that and down here, we've been down here for 8 years, but we had 3 what I would call sleepy years where everything was kind of nice and laid back. And then all of a sudden they're putting in the highways and the sidewalks and the developments and the Starbucks and the Targets and the Aldis. And come on, I'm like I hate it. I don't need that. I'd rather go to the country store. So, but yeah, if in fact that theory is true, Bigfoot is on the run because of development. There's too many people coming down here.
Mhm.
Too much, all the swampland and the forest are being gobbled up. So I'm sure that's probably happening in Arkansas, right?
It is. They are definitely developing a lot more than you would think they would be for it being the natural state. But they do have, I think for Arkansas, I think they have a larger area of land that's protected than most states do.
Yeah. Okay.
Like the Ozarks and things like that, that could never be torn down or reconstructed because it's protected land. So I think that that's one thing that, Arkansas has that a lot of states don't have, is that level of protected land. But we definitely have, stories of our own coming out of this state in reference to what people think might be the Bigfoot. We talked before the interview when we were kind of chatting a little bit. We had talked about the folk monster
Yeah.
that and I had done a case on, and a lot of people believe that that's what the folk monster is. There's a whole town that's dedicated to the idea that they are surrounded by Bigfoot.
Hmm.
Um, but to go back to what you were saying about the high rise of sightings kind of being around the 70s, do you think that there was something in particular about that time frame that would make that sightings of that kind of spike opposed to before the 70s? When they still, like, a lot of people were still out hunting and being
Hmm.
active, and there wasn't a whole lot of development at that point. So,
Well, it was a less crowded, a less congested time period, so that's for sure. We had less technology and less communication, as far as computers and all that. So it was a different era. So what we saw, what we documented, I think was probably, and listen and hear me well, was probably a lot more authentic than maybe sightings that we're seeing today, only because of AI and all of this stuff, all this video and computer enhanced stuff that is really like just spoon feeding us, this babble, this drivel. So, you have to take some of these sightings currently with a grain of salt. In my book, I dedicate the book to the four horsemen of Sasquatchery, and these guys, I mean, they're like just pioneers. But Peter Byrne, John Green, Grover Krantz, Rene Dahinden, these were guys that were pioneers. They worked and interviewed witnesses of Sasquatch back in the day before there was any kind of computerized data system, microfiche film, any of that stuff. So they would hear about a sighting, and they would go over to several counties or several states and interview these people. Peter Byrne was the one that there was a Texas oil man named Tom Slick. Tom Slick was a very wealthy millionaire oil guy. He brought Peter Byrne over from Ireland, sent him to the Himalayas looking for Yeti, the abominable snowman, sent him to the Pacific Northwest looking for Bigfoot. And there was a motion picture that was being made. It was the story of Tom Slick, Tom Slick Monster Hunter, starring Nicolas Cage. And this motion picture is now on hold, but would have been fantastic, only to learn about Peter Byrne, this adventurer. He's like a John Keel. He's like the archaeologist, the Indiana Jones. He was like a living Indiana Jones. So to be able to see a combination of Tom Slick and Indiana Jones together would have been phenomenal. But Peter Byrne was one. John Green, the British Columbia journalist. Grover Krantz, one of the four horsemen of Sasquatchery, the first person to use the native word Sasquatch in his documents. And that was from British Columbia. And then Rene Dahinden, and I believe he was a Swedish guy, and very hard to get along with. But Renee was the one that maintained the rights, the photographic rights of the Patterson Gimlin film, and then Patterson's wife had the rights to the video version of the Patterson Gimlin film. However, if any of your listeners think that anybody made millions of dollars or $100,000 from that film, forget it, because it's almost like public domain. Every time you turn around, you see that picture or that video. Nobody's paying anybody for it. They're just using it. And again, that video is only 58 seconds. And that was the infamous Patterson Gimlin film from 1967. They were in Northern California making a documentary, and they were hoping to go and make enough money to fund an expedition to look for Bigfoot. And so they were going around the bend, and there they see Patty, a female Bigfoot. They could see the breasts and everything. And Patty turns around and looks at Patterson, and then turns and keeps on going. And at that point, the horse is reared, and Patterson was falling off the horse, grabbing his camera and shooting as he was falling. And all he got was 58 seconds, the infamous 58 seconds. And then Bob Gimlin, he had a pack horse, and both those horses were bolting, and he was falling off too. So that was the story, but that was 1967. Numerous people looked at it. The one thing that I think is pretty fascinating, it was John Napier. John Napier was a British primatologist. He was in charge of the Smithsonian. Hi, Fallon.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, you just made it through the ice storm, right?
Yeah, okay. We did.
Okay, well, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay. So we were talking about the Patterson Gimlin film, and a lot of people believed in it, but John Napier, who was the British primatologist, said in 1972, they allowed the people from the Smithsonian to take a look at this video and vet it. And there were some Russian scientists there. There were a bunch of people that were really big in the field. John Napier said it was a fake, and he said that he believed it was a hoax because Patty, what they called this creature, had an upper body like an ape, like a simian, long arms, muscular arms, and a body like a hominid, a bipedal hominid. So he said what they did was they cobbled together these two characteristics. So it had to be a fake. This was 1972. In 1974, these guys over in Ethiopia found Lucy. That's Australopithecus. Now, they named it after the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. That night, they got drunk as they listened to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. But they found Australopithecus, the earliest known relative of man. They named it Lucy. And when John Napier saw that, he said, wait a second, because Lucy had an upper body like an ape and a bottom like a hominid, just like Patty. So Napier said, wait a second, this got to be real. So this was an example of science catching up with the theory, science coming full circle. So it was pretty neat that John Napier, and again, he should have been one of the four horsemen. He should have been the fifth horseman of Sasquatchery. But so anyway, that was one wonderful example of how in science, and scrutinizing some of these things. One thing about that film, scientists in Russia were always a little bit more serious about the abominable snowman, Yeti, or what they call Almas, than we were. Back in the day, they spent $2 million on an expedition looking for it. They had a branch of zoology called, I'm blocking right now, called hominology. Thank you. Hominology, and that's the study of these creatures that are unknown, but that may be the link between maybe ape and Bigfoot. So this hominology, they're looking for these things. So again, it's a cryptozoology. It's a branch of zoology that is not endorsed or recognized by a lot of the scientific community. They think it's a lot of quackery, but nonetheless, this is where a lot of the excitement is. And that's why, I mean, we're so much of us are putting our effort into cryptozoology and just, trying to figure out what it is. So
I think that that's incredible that there's a whole group of people that are dedicated to the idea that, it would be unreasonable, in my opinion, to be closed off to the idea that these things could exist, that these, there's so much of the world and the ocean that are undiscovered and, not lived in or inhabited. Like, it would be insane to think that there aren't things out there that we may not fully know about. And the fact that there's a whole group of people who are dedicating their lives to not only validating people who have had experiences or believe that they've had experiences, but also, kind of granting some kind of a peace of mind to the world that it is possible that these things exist.
Yeah. We're dabbling in the world of the paranormal, the supernatural. And I was friends with Dr. Frederick Lamont Santee. He was a white witch. He was the high priest for the Coven of the Cata that was initiated by Sybil Leek. She was the world's most famous witch. So she was really into the PR. And when she was from Great Britain, but when Great Britain repealed the Witch Act back around 57, Sybil Leek wrote this book about how to be a witch. And she claimed she was a member of the Druids. She was with the priest class, not the lower class of witches, but she was so cool. She told the world that it was okay to dabble in Wiccanism and paganism, that you could do that. It wasn't just about Christian and Judeo-Christian religious ethics, but there were other ones before Christianity. And, but anyway, Sybil Leek came to Walpollepin, Pennsylvania, was just 5 miles down the road from where I was raised. And she brought her son, Julian, and her publicist. She was really into the PR, and she really hyped this, but she initiated Dr. Santee's Coven of the Cata, which Coven of the Cat, based on her Coven of the Horsa, the Coven of the Horse. So it was some pretty interesting things. But Dr. Santee told me that he believed that the supernatural was part of the scientific, that we just haven't been able to figure out why. And I believe everything's everything. It's all packed in there in this little sphere of energy, this orb, that it's all the same, that we all have, similar vibrations and levels of consciousness and all that. And, and that part I think is amazing, that there's more similarity than differences. And, my reason in doing this stuff is I'm just incredibly curious about, the paranormal. And, I have people coming up to me and saying that they're Christian and they don't listen to this. I have people come up to me and warn me not to get too close to the flame, that I'm going to get sucked into this evil portal. And really, these are friends who have good intentions, but they totally misread what the paranormal is. And you think I'm in danger. I'm a student, I'm an academic, I'm just learning. I'm not, dabbling in anything. So, I don't know. Fallon, what do you think of all that?
It's definitely interesting. I really like the paranormal myself.
Uh-huh.
I'm really into it. I think there's definitely a lot out there that we don't know, we don't understand, and I think it would be really interesting to be able to learn a lot more about it.
Yep. There was a movie called Johnny Got His Gun, and I think Metallica did a song called One. It was from Dalton Trumbull's Johnny Got His Gun. It was an anti-war World War I novel, and Johnny's blown up. All he got is a torso and a head, and somebody teaches him Morse code, so he's able to tap his head against the wall and communicate with this nurse. And they said, "What do you want?" And all he's saying is, "I just want to walk in the sunshine and hold my girlfriend's hand and smell the earth." And he's gone crazy with this being able to communicate. And I think that some of the stuff is just like that experience where everything is opened up, at one time. And it reminds me of Johnny and Johnny Got His Gun, that all of a sudden, and they think he's crazy. And so they just shoot him up with Thorazine and all the tranquilizers, so they shut him down when he's experience in something profound, and they don't recognize it. So,
Yeah.
but so
I can't.
so I just got a call.
Sorry.
Are we good?
I think so. It keeps kind of glitching out on us a little bit here.
Okay, Men in Black.
Are you on? Oh, is your screen black?
No, it's the Men in Black. You know, they're
Oh.
stalking us. They're stalking us.
They don't want this information out.
No.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're going to get it out anyway.
Have you heard anything lately about Luis Elizondo?
I have not.
No.
Yeah, he was the guy. You know, the government had a couple of congressional UFO hearings. One was in July of 2023, and they interviewed David Grush, who was a former military intelligence. And Grush said that he knows where the bodies are, and he knows where the saucers are. He said that he knows people, government officials, who have reversed engineered these craft and actually were injured doing it. So that was 2023. In 2024, it was November, they had a similar congressional hearing, and they brought in Luis Elizondo, former military intelligence. And so he wrote a book, and he started to go on the circuit. But just recently, he had to back off because they found out that he was a hoax. He had this picture of this saucer, this huge mothership that he said they shot over Romania, and it looked like there was almost like a little city, a mother city underneath it. And here it seemed to be the reflection of a chandelier that was imprinted on this saucer. So he was caught out. He was charging $50 a head, and he was in Philadelphia when he said this, and he was busted. So if you were to Google Luis Elizondo, you know, you'll see all this stuff. And he was one of the whistleblowers, but it's unfortunate. And in the Lost Tribes of Bigfoot, I call out the hoaxers. I believe that they have sold their souls to the devil. They've done this for their 15 minutes of fame, and they're a discredit, a disservice to the paranormal and the cryptozoology community. And I think they do need to be called out. And I have actually 3 chapters. I don't know if you read those, but one was on the Piltdown Man, one was on the Minnesota Iceman, and the other one was about the people that were hanging out at Jerry Crew's site in 1958 when they first saw the Bigfoot tracks. And as you know, 1958 was the red letter date when they saw these tracks for the first time. And the first time the Humboldt Times newspaper in Northern California wrote about California's Bigfoot, California's abominable snowman, Bigfoot. That was the first time that Bigfoot made it into newspapers. And the Humboldt Times, the newspaper, got thousands of letters saying, yes, I've seen them too, or yes, I believe they exist. So 1958 was the date that Bigfoot came into our vocabulary, just as in 1947, that was the year that flying saucers came into our vocabulary. And it really should have been flying discs, because when Kenneth Arnold saw those 9 shimmering discs, he explained that they were like discs flying over the water like saucers. And the reporter, instead of calling them flying discs, called them flying saucers. So that was sort of an interesting thing. But, you know, flying saucers and Bigfoot are part of our vocabulary today, whether we like it or not. So.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with you on, you know, when somebody reports something like that, and whether it's a hoax or it's not, people tend to jump on that bandwagon and it kind of creates this domino effect, and it makes it really hard to shuffle out the fact from fake sometimes. But since you did just mention the UFO and the Bigfoots kind of together in association, what do you think about that theory of the Bigfoot and the aliens kind of being connected? Do you think there's like a realm or a plane where that's a possibility for the people who have seen those things?
Yeah. When I first heard about that Bigfoot flying saucer connection, I thought, this is crazy. I just shook my head. This is nuts. I don't believe it. But I found out that especially in Western Pennsylvania, in a 5-county area called Chestnut Ridge, and they say it's 4 counties, but it's more like 5 or 6 counties. But there's just a lot of things that are too weird in Western Pennsylvania. And that's that slice from Pittsburgh down to West Virginia, like 100-mile stretch, mountains and everything else. But that's where they see the most UFO sightings, and also coupled with orbs or flying saucer sightings. And Stan Gordon, who's sort of the keeper of the flame, he's written books and documented this, but he'll have stories about Mr. and Mrs. Brown going out to the farm to feed the cows, and they see a Bigfoot creature, and then they see the orbs come there, or they'll see an orb with Bigfoot creatures coming out of it. So there's always this connection between Bigfoot and these saucers, which I tend to believe shows that there's a paranormal aspect to Bigfoot. They talk about bilocation and rapid transport, where you see Bigfoot in front of you and then they're behind you. So they seem to shape shift in between dimensions. You see them and now you don't. So my theory is, if it's not flesh and blood, what is it? And I believe that Bigfoot and also flying saucers are interdimensional, or they travel through other dimensions, through parallel universes, and that's why sometimes we see them and sometimes we don't. So I think that's the reality. The other thing I believe, if we're just looking at theories, the other thing that I believe is that some people have a more well-developed mechanism to see these things that the rest of us don't. Maybe a higher vibration, maybe a higher level of consciousness. I'm not exactly sure, but they're able to see these cryptids or ghosts or demons or angels or spirit guides, whatever. They see things that are always here, but they're only being seen by certain people. So again, I think these people are blessed. I think it's a sacred thing. It's I don't have that ability, but I think one can develop it, but you have to be serious about this, and to be able to go and raise that level of consciousness. And unfortunately, when you have 4 kids, or when you have a 9-to-5 job, or when you're dealing with all the noise out there, the white noise and the commercialism and everything else, it's really hard. It's hard to get out of the chatter, the clutter, and free your mind and elevate and all that. So I think we can do that. I think maybe women easier than men. For some reason, I think that women have a pathway to spirituality for some reason. I'm not sure how, but just blessed with that genetic makeup, that ability. I think more so than men. I think, but I may be wrong on that. But anyway, people that see Bigfoot, for them, it's a profound experience. It's sometimes life-changing. I know one guy that says he has PTSD from seeing it. So it's different with everybody. So, we don't know. But like I said, there's plenty of theories out there. And the one I hang my hat on is that it's an interdimensional being. So I think that makes the most sense to me.
I would agree with that. Fallon and I, we do a lot of the paranormal stuff on our podcast, and it seems like one common denominator in a lot of those stories is the lady in white. And it's always the same description of the lady in white. And that's one thing that I think can be said with the Bigfoot as well, is regardless of when you're getting, no matter how far back or how current you get the description of the Bigfoot, as far as a general description of what they saw, it's pretty much the same for the most part. There's a little differences here and there, but the general sighting is the same every time almost.
Yeah.
So I think I personally tend to agree with you, and I lean towards that idea as well, because it's not a coincidence that all of the sightings and descriptions of this particular cryptid are so similar, no
Yeah.
matter when they were seen.
Yeah, you're right. They say when you look at commonality that Bigfoot glides, it doesn't walk, that it doesn't reflect light, but it emanates light, that it has a stench, usually like either a wet dog, fecal matter, garbage, or it could have a perfumey smell. So they use, and this is based on conversations I've had with people out in British Columbia. They believe that Bigfoot uses this smell as a means of enticing us or scaring us away. The one guy, Albert Ostman, he's in the book, 1924 sighting. Albert Ostman was the first and only known case of being abducted by a Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah.
He did not report any kind of a smell. So they captured him. What was happening, he was, I believe, a Swedish-Canadian trapper hunter, and somebody was messing with his campsite. So he decided to lay inside his sleeping bag with a rifle, and he was going to shoot this culprit, whoever it was. Well, somebody picks him up and takes him, and what seemed like to be miles. And here it was a family of Sasquatch, mother, father, son, daughter. The daughter was feeding Albert Ostman sweetgrass. They were looking at him like they were curious, and nothing really threatening. But he got the idea in his head that they were going to use him for procreation. So he flips out. He got really weirded out. So he had chewing tobacco. So he enticed the older Sasquatch to try the tobacco. And when the Sasquatch got sick, Albert Ostman took off. Now, that was all well and good. He went back home, kept his mouth shut. He didn't say anything. And then all of a sudden, there were sightings of this Sasquatch. People were reporting. So Albert Ostman talked to John Green, the British Columbia journalist, one of the four horsemen of Sasquatchery. John Green took his narrative. He took his story. And to this day, it holds up the way he described it and the way he described their behavior. So other than the smell, everything he talked about was pretty much right on. And again, before the days of computers, before the days when you and I could look up Bigfoot in the computer and read about it and become an authority on Bigfoot. This was back in the day when you had to do your own due diligence. So anyway, so Albert Ostman was part of that. And I have a chapter in Lost Tribes of Bigfoot about Albert Ostman. And that is one of the barcodes, one of the examples of immersive book technology where I talk about that chapter. And one thing too, just for the, with the connection between Bigfoot and UFOs, 1924, the Bigfoot abduction of Albert Ostman, 1963, the UFO abduction of Betty and Barney Hill in the White Hills of New Hampshire. So again, after Betty and Barney Hill, I mean, everybody was talking about being abducted, and people like Whitney Strieber, John Mack, John Keel, like everybody was writing about it and talking about it, and it became another genre. So it's pretty amazing how that part took off, with ufology. So I don't know, just pretty amazing stuff. I mean, this whole thing, whether it's Bigfoot or flying saucers, I see a whole lot of commonality, with both of those.
Very fascinating. Just all of the theories and the things that they are able to kind of, with the technology now, they're able to kind of discredit and prove to be accurate as far as things that people have recorded throughout the years. So there's a lot of downfall to the technology, I think, but there's also a lot of benefits in that aspect, because it's kind of giving us the ability, as we're getting more interested in those things, or at least a bigger group of people are getting more interested in those things. It's giving us the ability to kind of move things into files.
Yeah. The only thing that it's not doing, though, with all the trail cameras and drones and infrared drones and technology, we're not seeing what we want to see. I mean, we're not finding anything. And a lot of these Sasquatchers are saying that Bigfoot has the ability to evade that. So some kind of psychic ability to evade being captured on film or whatever. So I don't know, but I mean, there's plenty of people trying to use things like recorded songs from whales, to try to attract Bigfoot, or smells, etc. So I don't know. I talk to people in British Columbia that claim they are students and Sasquatch are the teachers. That Sasquatch are teaching them. And I had a guy tell me that he believes that my interest in Bigfoot is because Sasquatch is working through me. So that's his theory for me. And when I first heard that, I thought, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I never considered that. But but it doesn't matter. I mean, what matters is that that we're motivated and interested and excited about other stuff, and we're sharing that excitement. That to me is pure joy, to be able to do that with like-minded people. To find our own tribe, and this is why podcasts like you are so relevant. Because there's people out there that want to hear this stuff and want to hear what we have to say.
Absolutely. And we definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your book and your theories and your ideas and sharing the things that you believe in. And it's been fantastic to have. I was so excited for this interview. And it's been fantastic. I know before we were talking before the interview, you had mentioned that you have another book that's about to come out.
Yeah, that's
also super interesting.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I didn't get on here.
Okay, it's called Paranormal Apocalypse. Is This How It Ends? And there's Ray that dressed as a Grim Reaper, and there's the Hourglass, so there's all the skulls. Maxim, the Furek, author of the Shepton mythology. So this is the one I'm working on, and I talk about fear, as H.P. Lovecraft said, that fear is the most basic emotion that man has, and fear of the unknown is the most powerful of emotions. And I talk about this fear in Paranormal Apocalypse, that you and I are being directed by either religious groups, political groups, doomsday groups, whatever, to keep us scared, to keep us afraid, and to keep us controlled. So, so that's how cult leaders work. And anyway, the book will be done this summer, and I think it's going to be good because there's plenty of books on Bigfoot, plenty of books on saucers and the paranormal, but there's very few books about the apocalypse. And if you read Revelations, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, we're going to die, but before we die, we're going to suffer. So that's the message. But my book does have a happy ending, so don't get all gloomy on me. So for your listeners, my name's Maxim Furek. I'm a paranormal author, and you could get my books on Amazon.com, Hanger One Publishers, or Beyond the Fray Publishers, or at my website, which is www.maximfurek.com. So if you're interested in a autographed copy, look me up on my website, and we could talk. But again, thank you so much, Casey and Fallon, for having me on Render the Darkness, and thank you for the good work that you're doing, exploring the depths of the paranormal. I think this is just like wonderful stuff that you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Stay the course.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for being on here with us and doing this interview. It's been very informative, and it's been a blast. For the listeners out there, I definitely highly encourage that you run and buy this book as fast as you can, because it's incredibly informative. If this is something that you're interested in, the things that we've been talking about. Also, if you do go out and buy that book, if you could please leave a review on that book, that would be extremely helpful. I honestly, personally, before we started doing the podcasts, I did not realize how much taking those few seconds just to kind of tell the author or other people who may be looking at purchasing a book, I didn't realize how much that helped the author. I do now, and it really does help them tremendously. And it just takes a couple minutes of your time. And, it doesn't, hopefully it's positive feedback, but even if it's not, I'm sure they'd still want to get it regardless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's kind of their way of being able to figure out what direction they need to go with their next bit of work.
Mm-hmm.
So any review you can leave if you do get to read the book would be very helpful and appreciated, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I appreciate, and thanks for saying that. Yeah, we need that as authors, just to draw attention to our works and to show other people that people are actually reading our works and appreciating them. So it's just a great thing. So, well, thank you, and I hope the weather gets better, and hopefully we'll meet again.
Absolutely, we would love to have you back.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Casey. Thanks, Fallon. You guys,
thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Bye now.
Good night. Bye.